ahead and hit go. Okay, now we're ready. I call them the November 13th, 2018 meeting of the work session of the City Commission work session to order. And present are, you're right here.
Commissioner Shaw,
Here.
Commissioner O'Donnell,
Here.
Commissioner Mengelberg. Commissioner Mengelberg,
Is here.
Chair Ide.
Here. Any future agenda items? I hear none. Okay, item 3A, community survey results. And Mr. Lewis.
I'll be running this one,
okay.
sitting in for
Sorry, of course.
Kristen tonight. So tonight we have a presentation from Jason Morato. He's a senior project manager for the ETC Institute. So as you may recall, we had ETC Institute come in and administer a survey of our residents during the summer of 2018. The purpose of the survey was to help the city of Oregon City ensure that the city's priorities continue to match the needs and desires of our residents. So I'll go ahead and invite Mr. Morato up to walk through the results of that survey.
Great, thanks. My name is Jason Morato. I'm a senior project manager at ETC Institute. And ETC is a marketing research firm based in Olathe, Kansas, which is a suburb of Kansas City. And the thing that we specialize in is doing community surveys for city and county governments all across the country. And we recently, for the first time, administered a citizen satisfaction survey for the city of Oregon City. So today I'm going to go through the high-level major findings from the survey. We have one quick slide about ETC Institute. We're based in the Kansas City area, but we're a national leader in providing market research for local governments. We've been doing this type of work for over 30 years. And in the last 10 years alone, we've done surveys in more than 900 communities in 49 states. So this is really the type of work that we specialize in. This is just a quick rundown of what I'll go through today. I'll go over the purpose and methodology of the survey. What I call the bottom line up front is our main conclusions from the survey. And then I'll go through the major survey findings to show how we came to those conclusions. And I'll be happy to answer any questions as well. So there's several reasons to do a survey like this. One is to get an objective assessment of how satisfied residents are with major city services, and also determine their top priorities for the city. Also, this survey will hopefully set a baseline for future surveys. A lot of communities that we work with do these surveys every couple of years. That way you can start to measure trends over time and see how the results change over the years. And then also with the survey, we're able to compare your results with other communities on both a regional and a national basis. So this survey was 7 pages long, and that's a pretty typical length for one of our community surveys. They're usually 6 to 7 pages, so it's a little towards the long end, but still within the typical range. The survey was administered by a combination of mail and online to randomly selected households throughout the city. Our goal is to get at least 300 completed surveys, and we ended up with 307, so we accomplished our goal. And one thing we always do when we administer these surveys is as we collect the data, we check the demographics to make sure it reflects the actual population of the city. So we had a really good representation by age, by gender, by geographic location. And the results of these 307 surveys at the 95% level of confidence has a margin of error of plus or minus 5.5%. Essentially, that means if we did this survey the same way 100 times, 95 times the results would be plus or minus 5.5% from what we're reporting. So the results aren't perfect, but really it's a very small margin of error. So here you can see we have a map of the city. The red dots are households that completed a survey, so we had a good representation throughout the city. So here's our main conclusions from the survey. We found that residents have a positive perception of the city, and I've just listed here a couple of examples of why we say that. 84% of residents rated the city as either an excellent or a good place to live, and then 76% rated the city as an excellent or a good place to raise children. We also found that Oregon City rates higher than other cities in the overall quality of city services. And this is one of the most important questions on the survey, because here we're asking residents to take into account all the different services that the city provides and really give an overall satisfaction rating. So you can see you're 21% above the regional average and then 15% above the U.S. average when you look at the overall quality of city services. And then one of the areas where you rated the farthest above other communities is customer service. You rated 14% above the regional and the U.S. average in providing customer service by city employees. And then we found the top overall priorities for the city are maintenance of city streets, economic development, parks, trails, and open space, and enforcing codes and ordinances. And we'll look at that in more detail in just a little bit. So first, we'll take a look at just some general perceptions that residents have of the city. So here we ask residents to rate their perceptions of the city in a number of different ways. This question is asked on a 5-point scale. So the dark blue you can see are residents who are very satisfied. Light blue is satisfied. The white is neutral. And in this case, if you look at neutral as average or median expectations, it's a rating of a 3 on the 5-point scale. And then the pink are those who are dissatisfied or very dissatisfied. So overall, the positive ratings outweigh the negative. The area I especially want to point out here is that very top row, overall quality of services provided by the city. 64% of residents are either very satisfied or satisfied, and that's compared to only 8% who are dissatisfied. So you've got about an 8-to-1 ratio of residents who are satisfied versus dissatisfied with the overall quality of city services. Typically, that average is more about 3 or 4 to 1, so that's a really, really good ratio. And here we ask residents to rate the city, again, in a number of different ways. You can see if you look at the top of this chart, most residents feel like Oregon City is an excellent or a good place to live and to raise children. The couple areas that rate the lowest here are the city as a place for dining and entertainment and as a place to shop. For each of those, you've got just over 40% of residents who gave a rating of below average or poor. So this was the very first question on the survey. Here we asked residents to rate major categories of city services. So here we're asking people to look at these at the kind of big picture departmental level. And then later on in the survey, we asked some more specific areas within some of these categories. So again, the blue are the positive ratings, the red are the negative. And what really stands out here is for most areas, there's very low levels of dissatisfaction. And in fact, there's only 3 areas where at least 25% or more of residents are dissatisfied. That's economic development, maintenance of city streets, and then enforcing codes and ordinances. And then you can see the top highest rated areas are public library and police services. So here again, we have a map of the city. And what we did here is we broke the results down by a census block group. And we did this for every question on the survey that's asked on a 5-point scale. So the report has over 100 maps like this. This one is just based on the overall quality of city services. And you can see most of this map is blue, meaning that residents in most parts of the city are satisfied with the overall quality of city services. You've got a couple of areas that are the yellowish color, which is a rating of neutral or average. But there's no orange or no red, meaning that there's no pockets where residents are dissatisfied with the overall quality of city services.
Interesting.
So now we'll take a look to see how your results compare to other communities across the country. So for these next few charts, the blue line are Oregon City residents who are either very satisfied or satisfied. The red are the satisfaction ratings from residents from all across the U.S., and then the yellow are the satisfaction ratings from residents in the northwest part of the country. This just includes the states of Oregon and Washington. And this is based on data collected by ETC Institute. So as we go through these, I put blue arrows where you rate significantly above both the regional and national average, red arrows where you're significantly below. So this first chart's for major categories of city services. And you can see there's 3 areas where you rate much higher than other communities. Overall quality of police services, you can see you're 10% above both the regional and the national average. Customer service from city employees. You can see there you have a 61% satisfaction rating. Both the regional and national average is just a little under 50%. And then effectiveness of communication with the public, 5% above the national average, 9% above the U.S. average. Or that says reverse, 4% above the U.S. average, 9% above the regional average. And then there's two areas where you rate much below other communities, recreation programs, then enforcing codes and ordinances. So these comparisons are for perceptions of the city. Very high ratings for the overall quality of city services. You can see you're 15% above the national average, more than 20% above the regional average. But then you do rate lower than other communities in the overall feeling of safety and then the overall image of the city. Here's some more perceptions of the city. Again, very high ratings as a place to live and as a place to raise children, much higher than other communities in both of those two areas. And for public safety, you can see there's three areas where you rate significantly higher than the national average. Visibility of police in the community, how quickly police respond to emergencies, and then just the overall efforts to prevent crime. And here are comparisons for parks and recreation. You're a little above other communities in the quality of facilities, but lower in the appearance and maintenance of existing parks, the quality of outdoor athletic fields, and then the quantity of city trails. And for transportation and infrastructure, you can see here there's three areas where you're significantly higher than the benchmarking averages: street lighting in neighborhoods, maintenance of neighborhood streets, and then the condition of sidewalks in neighborhoods are the highest rated areas as far as being the farthest above that national average. And for codes, you can see all three of these areas are below other communities. This includes enforcing sign regulation, enforcing the cleanup of litter and debris on private property, and then enforcing mowing and trimming on private property. Then this last slide here is for customer service. So we saw earlier for the overall quality of customer service, the ratings are much higher than other communities. These items here are based on people who've actually contacted the city in the past year. And you can see for all five areas, you rate significantly higher than other communities. So employees are doing a great job being courteous and polite, easy to contact, doing what they said they would in a timely manner, giving prompt, accurate, and complete answers to questions, and then helping residents resolve their issues. That's actually an area where you're the farthest above other communities. So now we'll take a look at some of the top priorities. So this is the important satisfaction rating, and this is a tool that we've used to help communities set priorities. And this analysis is based on two questions on the survey. First, we asked residents how satisfied they are with services, which is the type of data we've been looking at. And then the follow-up question is, which services are the most important for the city to emphasize? So the idea behind this is that those items that have a combination of a low satisfaction rating, but also the ones that people think are the most important should be the highest priorities. So this first chart is for major categories of services. You can see there's two areas that we've identified as a very high priority. It's the overall maintenance of streets, and then the overall effectiveness of economic development. And then there's three areas that fell into the high priority category: enforcing codes and ordinances, parks, trails, and open space, and then communication with the public. So that's for overall categories of services. We also did this type of analysis for some specific areas. This one's for transportation and infrastructure. There's four areas that stood out as being a high priority: maintaining major city streets, as well as neighborhood streets, traffic calming measures in neighborhoods, and then the availability of safe pedestrian ways along major streets. For parks and recreation, here you can see the top three priorities are quality of recreational areas for dogs, quantity of city trails, and then the appearance and maintenance of existing city parks. And then for code enforcement, top priorities are enforcing the cleanup of litter and debris on private property, enforcing codes designed to protect public safety and health, And then for public safety, the top priority here is response to issues with transients, and the other highest priorities are response to drug control and overall efforts to prevent crime.
Do you think that response to issues with transients do you feel, we have such a good police department, people are happy with their response times, are happy with their efforts, are happy with their presence,
Right.
yet we get a rating that their feeling of safety is not as high as we would like.
Right.
Is there a conclusion to be drawn there, or, why do they feel that way, given all the positives we have?
Right. I do think a lot of it is, because it is mostly positive for police department.
it
It's
is.
a very good overall. And I think a lot of it does have to do with this, response to issues with transients and then response to drug control. We also had a chance, gave people a chance to write open-ended comments, and there were a number of comments about both of those things listed.
Okay, so I know we're going to get a high-level presentation tonight, but it behooves us on the
Right.
commission to really drill down and look at the specifics and go into that.
Right. Yep,
Thanks.
absolutely. Yep. And then the last section is just some other various survey findings. We asked residents where they currently get information about city programs, service, and events. By far, the top source is Trail News. Over 70% of residents learn about the city through that source. The second most mentioned source was social media. Now, in that previous question, we asked how do residents currently get information about the city? Now we're asking what are their most preferred ways to get information? And the most preferred way by far is Trail News. Second most preferred way is social media. So really what this says is that the ways that residents are currently getting information about the city is pretty well aligned with their preferred ways. We asked residents what are their top priorities for capital investments. So we had 8 items listed here. We asked residents to pick their top 5 choices. The blue line is their first choice, their top priority. You can see the rest of the scale there. Yellow is second, pink is their third choice, the light blue is fourth, and then the orange is the 5th choice. So if you look at the sum of their top 5 choices, the top priority is road maintenance, pavement preservation, followed by park improvements, then the Willamette Falls Legacy Project, and then sidewalks. Now, if you look at just the blue bar, which is their first choice, the one they think is the most important, then again, by far the top priority is road maintenance and pavement preservation. Now, we also asked residents about the current level of service, how much it should change in various areas. And for this question, the dark blue means residents think the level of service should be much higher. The light blue means it should be a little higher. The white means that the current level of service is good, it should stay about the same. And then the pink means the level of service should be a little lower or much lower. So you can see the area that residents think should receive a higher level of service is transportation, facilities, and programs. 75% of residents feel like the level of service should be either much higher or a little higher. The other areas that residents think should have a higher level of service are parks, trails, and open space, and then recreation, facilities, and programs. For the other areas, the highest rated area was that the level of service should stay the same. And then we also asked residents to rate the current pace of development. And here you can see the dark blue means that residents feel the current pace of development is much too slow. The light blue, it's too slow. The yellowish means it's just about right as is. And then the pink means the current pace of development is either too fast or much too fast. So you can see here the areas that residents think the pace of development is moving too slowly is technology and other industries, employment opportunities, housing options for the aging population, and then retail, restaurants, and services. There's a couple of areas where there's a little higher percentage of people who think the pace of development is too fast compared to too slow, which is apartments and then townhomes. So just a quick recap. We saw that residents have a very positive perception of the city overall. Most people give high ratings to the city as a place to live and then as a place to raise children. You rate much higher than other cities when you look at the overall quality of city services. And then the area that really stands out the most is quality of customer service from city employees. You rate much higher overall, and then also in all those specific areas that we looked at. And then the top overall priorities are maintenance of city streets, economic development, park trails and open space, and then enforcing codes. So that's everything that I had. Of course, there's always room for improvement, but really excellent results overall. So with that, does anyone have any questions or comments?
I have a question on methodology.
Um,
We have one category that we send out, I don't know how many did we send out?
It was sent to about 2,500
2,500.
randomly
So we
selected
got
households.
about 12% respondents.
Right.
Among those, I know that the results were stated as percentages. Did you get a high degree of don't knows? The don't know, I don't know.
It varies a lot from one question to the next. All those questions asked on a 5-point scale had an option of don't know. So for questions like police or streets, usually just a low level of don't know. But some of the more specific ones like recreation programs, the don't knows could be much higher. So it varies quite a bit from one
With the
question to
user
the
and
next.
their opportunity to use that particular service.
Right, yep.
I have a question unrelated to our specific survey, but more about your organization.
Right.
So when you do these kind of surveys for cities or 8 organizations, do you follow up with them to see how they responded to the survey and whether or not their response, if you're able to measure in some way the success of what the survey helped them to do?
As far as following up with people who filled out a survey,
With the agencies that, like the cities?
oh, sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a lot of communities we work with, we do surveys on a regular basis. Every couple of years is probably the most often. Sometimes it's every 3 or 4 years, sometimes maybe annually even. So a lot of times this is not just a one-time survey and then we never work with them again.
So you're able to compare every 2 years or 3 years or whatever, just to see what the improvements are or the changes are?
Yeah.
Based
yeah.
on demographics or?
Yeah,
questions
absolutely.
or-
Usually for clients, when we work with them on a regular basis, these questions asked on a 5-point scale, most of them stay the same each time, so you can measure the trends. Usually there's a few changes here and there each time we do the survey, but yeah, that's absolutely something we do is measure the trends, and then we can do a demographic breakdown, geographic breakdown. There's definitely a lot of detail you can get into.
So the questions are generally the same,
Yeah, generally the same. Yeah.
to be able to do the trends? Okay, I'm just curious
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah, and each time when we do a new survey, of course, we would go over the questions and decide which questions to keep the same and which ones to change, but most of them usually stay the same.
So you start with the format and then you tailor it to some extent to the community that you're servicing? Or this is a standard offering, and if you went to another community, you'd use the same format pretty much?
It's a combination of both. I mean, it's tailored to each community. There's questions we have benchmarking data for, like we looked at. So if you want to see how you compare to other communities, we can tell you which questions to ask. But if you want questions more tailored to your community, then we can do that also. Usually it's a combination of both. Usually about maybe 60 to 70% of the questions are kind of standard ones that we ask in a lot of different cities. And then other ones are much more tailored to each city.
So when
Do you have specific offerings that are tailored to specific lines of work, like parks and rec?
Yeah, absolutely.
You have one already constructed?
We do, yeah. We do surveys for a lot of different specific departments. Parks and Recreation is actually one of the ones we do the most, other than these citizen satisfaction surveys. So we've done, hundreds of surveys tailored to Parks and Recreation.
Perhaps we could have a conversation about that outside of this meeting and see where that would take us, and maybe an example of what you would do.
Yeah, absolutely. We can definitely send you some examples of surveys we've done in other communities.
Would you want that sent to you or Phil?
Send it to me.
Or send it to me?
I would be happy to take that. So when we received the original kind of standard language, what we did is we sent it to each of the departments, and we kind of just trying to be true to the question so that we would be able to compare it to other jurisdictions throughout the region and the country. But, there were minor word changes that were more commonly used in our community. And then we did have the ability where we added in some of the questions as it related to funding. So those were kind of our kind of tailored questions, but generally we wanted to be able to compare over time, not only to our own jurisdiction, but as well as to the other data that they have available throughout the region. So we tried to stay pretty consistent with the questions that were consistently used in other surveys. But then, like we said, we had the option to insert a couple extra ones, and that's where we inserted the questions about park funding, bonding, support, and whatnot.
Well, I like the methodology. I looked at it. There's some questions that are cross-checks on other questions to make sure we get the same response, that we don't get a tremendous variation. And then you break out the funding questions separate from the altruistic that I'd like to have. Are you willing to pay for it? And if so, how? So it was a good survey. Very insightful, and if we use it correctly, it'll guide us well.
I didn't feel as if anything, the only thing that stood out to me as a surprise was the overall maintenance of city streets. I mean, I know that we're an old city and that, you know, we need, many of our streets need replacement or whatever, but the Public Works, where's John? Public Works is out there all the time working on streets. I mean, it's just happening. And I don't know, maybe people see that as a negative, that, you know, that the streets are in bad repair. I don't know what their thinking is that way. When I see them out there working, I'm like, oh, they're making improvements. That's great. So, you know, it just depends on their persuasion, I guess.
Right.
But that was probably the thing that surprised me the most. The library and the police services, the quality there, I mean, doesn't surprise me at all.
Nope.
The sewer services, I'm happy that people are happy with that in general. And the water, you know, that's another Public Works process, and I'm sure that, you know, that's a good thing. People are happy with their water, very good thing. I'm thrilled that the city employees, the customer service is high on the list of things that are being appreciated. It doesn't surprise me at all, because I know many of you work extremely hard and work toward doing a good job every day. And I think that says a lot for our HR department and in the policies and procedures that they have in place that way. But overall, you know, if you just kind of look down from a 40,000 foot level, nothing is really a big surprise on here to me. Except for also one other thing, the economic development, I was just surprised that it wasn't higher. I think because I know how hard our economic development department works, and you know, it's just not always an area that, when there's a lot of competition out there, that you know, you can't always have what you want. But that was a bit of a surprise to me as well. Just my initial comments.
I think what the community sees is results. They, you know, if you work hard for months and months and nothing comes to fruition, they don't see the background work. So in the end, you get judged on results.
Mm-hmm.
So, over the last 4 years, I've had the opportunity to be on several committees, and anywhere from the Citizens Involvement Committee to the library to the Public Works building, and so got involved with the public quite a bit. And so this doesn't surprise me at all. People love this city. You know, we have our few issues and stuff, but it's pretty normal. But it's a great place to educate kids and everything. So none of this was really a surprise to me. I heard about the economic development now as we're out there and stuff. And so anyway, I'm really happy that it aligns with everything I heard out there. So thank you.
Speaking of the economic development, I wonder exactly what the survey taker was thinking, whether it was, you know, like what's going on in the department, or potentially poor decisions made at the commission level in the past that where projects didn't go through that they were hoping that would have gone through, so.
Or was it because they were uncomfortable with it and really couldn't get a grasp? It's like putting urban renewal on there or something, that,
Yeah, I don't know if
maybe
we-
that influenced their decision because they weren't comfortable with it or something, I don't know.
I don't know if the survey reflected any of that type
Yeah.
of thought.
I don't know that it showed any of that, but there were, one of the areas that people wanted to see more growth in was retail and restaurants. And there's some comments about that too in the open-ended comments. I don't know that that was all of it, but that was one of the things that was mentioned.
To steal a phrase that's familiar to me, the live here, work here concept, I think there was some remarks, but they would like to see more employment opportunities in this area.
Right.
Within the city.
Yeah, yep, that was another area that,
Yeah.
On it?
right, rated high.
Well, we are working on it, you're correct.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Right,
Thanks, well done.
okay.
We have some bedside reading now, right?
Yeah, that's right, you got some bedside reading.
All right, well, thank you
Okay,
very much.
great.
Yep.
Thank you.
Did you come here from Kansas?
I did.
Oh.
Kansas headed,
I know where Olathe is.
do you? Wow, yep, had a direct flight there from there to here. Yep.
Well, thank you for coming.
Good.
I hope you like our city.
Yeah, oh, definitely.
Did you go down to Main Street?
Just briefly, this is my first time here. so-
Did you know it's a national award-winning Main Street? It just won the national award for the best Main Street in the country.
I didn't know
Just
that.
thought I'd tell you that.
I'll have to go there now.
Yeah,
Go down there
no.
and catch it before you get your red eye, so,
Yeah, and take the elevator down.
Yeah, I drove past it, I coming here, yeah, I wanted to take a closer look at that.
Okay, good, all right.
All right,
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Oh, okay, I keep forgetting I'm supposed to be doing something.
Tell us.
Yeah, okay, so the next is Ms. Riggs. You're after my heart here.
Good evening, Commissioners. We have some exciting topic before you tonight.
We're on pins and needles here.
I know, you can hardly wait for this.
And I hope Wyatt
exciting-
comes up after you, okay?
Hey, be nice. All right, so we're diving into a new 5-year strategic plan for records and information management. The vision, mission, and values remained the same from the previous plan to this current proposal in front of you. And what do you need to know? You need to know that one of the city's biggest assets, its records and information, is being managed appropriately and in compliance with state law, city policies, and retention requirements. Creating and adopting 5-year strategic plans helps to organize and guide the direction of the city's records and information management program. A few of the main objectives for this proposed strategic plan include conducting a citywide records inventory, implementation of a plan to manage text messages as a public record, implementation of a policy to protect vital records, issuance of city email addresses for members of the Planning Commission and the Historic Review Board, providing adequate storage for city photographs, artwork, and historical documents, or consider the transfer of these items to the Oregon State Archives, and then additional staff requested. Why do you need to know all of this? Records and information management for the City of Oregon City is guided by policies established by the City Commission, such as the city's records retention schedule and policy. There are costs associated with several items in this plan that might need to be discussed, prioritized, and budgeted for over the next 5 years. And there are also an additional staff request. By approving this strategic plan, you are not approving additional staffing or funding, but you are agreeing that these are priorities and objectives that are in line with the goals of the commission, and that you will need to consider, discuss, and prioritize during the upcoming retreat and budget discussions. Records and information management isn't something that has a direct funding source or new income being produced to offset some of the costs associated with it. This is something that would be funded from the general fund and would be beneficial to multiple departments across the city. It could save time, money, resources for such things as research projects, time spent on litigation discovery requests, public records requests, reducing off-site storage costs, and much, much more. Records and information management is a lot like other basic needs departments for the city to function, such as IT, facilities maintenance, and finance. As the city continues to grow, the department will need to grow to keep up with demands. In the time that I have taken over as city recorder, almost 4 years ago, the amount of electronic records we manage has gone from roughly 9,000 to 140,000 records. That is around 32,000 records a year and growing. This only reflects the electronic records that we are managing. This does not include the thousands more that we aren't managing and the records in paper or other formats. So what am I asking of the commission? I would like to recommend that the commission review the proposed 5-year strategic plan for records and information management, make sure it is consistent with the commission's goals, provide feedback, and move the item forward to the consent agenda for the December 5th, 2018 regular city commission meeting. And if all else fails, keep calm and find your records manager. Are there any questions?
Well, you know, I look at you, Katie, I'm sitting there, you know, what a great job you do, and I will reflect back again on my 4 years that it's always been a pleasure that there's just that comforting feeling that it's in good hands. And I also look to my left over here to Commissioner Ide, who kind of started you in that direction, you know, so this city's got to be very fortunate in how this kind of all transpired here. So thank you for your job there.
Okay. Thank you. You got a whole list? Bring it on.
No, it's just a statement.
Give her the chair.
She can handle it.
All
let me
righty
tell you.
then. What you're asking at this point is just a statement of general support. There's no details to speak of, so I'm sure we'll look at it, and I'm sure it'll get the support it needs. And we can deal with these next time.
Well, I just want to congratulate you for all the hard work and for hanging in there. I know how difficult it can be when we were talking earlier this evening about how, you know, records management is just something that if it's going well, you don't even know it's existing. It's when it's not going well that everything's in chaos. And so I don't think that I have noticed any chaos when it comes to the management of the records here in the city. And I'm really thrilled that you were able to keep that up and going. But because I have a little bit of history here, I do have one question.
Yeah, go for it.
And a long, long time ago, like 2007, we stacked several boxes, put all kinds of records into storage, because at that time we were just doing the whole city all at once and didn't have time to go through individually of all. And I'm just curious where that particular project is, if you've had time, or is that like a project for a special project someday to go through those boxes?
So that is a project that we've been working on.
Is that in the plan and as one of the objectives? Or
Honestly, this is my main objective that I brought forward. This is part of conducting the citywide records inventory. Mm-hmm. We know those records exist. We know they're there, but there's no description on those boxes of what they are. There's a whole log that's left blank in a section of tons and tons of boxes that we have no idea what's in them. And so we need to have either additional funding or staff to be able to have the time to retrieve those boxes, look through them, either dispose of them, scan them, and get them into our electronic records management system. Or sometimes they go right back to the same place they were, but we'll have a log of what's in that box, an inventory of what's in that box. So yeah, that's one of the main objectives I'd like to get done in the next 2 years.
Great.
But we have
Just
started on
curious
that.
more.
Yeah, we have started on that. I think out of the records that were there, we have, I want to say we have destroyed about at least 5 boxes. And then we have inventoried and scanned about 10 and put them in the electronic records management system. But we have a lot more. There's over 800 boxes in our offsite storage facility, and as many boxes as we pull back and try to properly appraise and figure out what we're gonna do with them, more get, I mean, we create records every day, more get sent there. So it's hard to say, oh yeah, in the time that we've had the 800 boxes there, we've pulled 30 to 40 boxes back, but we've had 30 to 40 boxes go as well. So it's hard to show those numbers when they're being.
Well, a lot of the ones there are permanent anyway. so,
Yes.
Yeah.
So you kept me here long enough that I did think of a
Oh,
couple
good.
of questions. That quantum leap from the 9,000 records to whatever, was that because we converted previously manual records to electronic records, or is the growth not including that?
So it's a combination of a lot of items. First thing was the commission agreed to implement the electronic records management system. So with doing that, we were able to migrate our previously electronic records that were available to the public, which was the 9,000, into the new system. Even though we had to do that manually, there was no integration so someone had to manually transfer over every one of those 9,000 records and put in the metadata for them. Then we create electronic records currently, but we didn't really have a management plan in place with our shared drive to manage those. So we started managing those and putting them into the electronic records management system, getting them off of our shared drive. So that reduced the amount of storage on our servers because our electronic records management system was in the cloud. So that helped kind of reduce the load in our IT department for the server capacity. Then we had new records that were being managed, like email, that we've never really managed before, and we started managing those. We have some people set up for automatic files that are linked to our electronic records management system, so when they place one of their emails into a file folder, it automatically transfers to the system. Those weren't being managed before.
And the only comment I make is I used your services before I became a commissioner and was well taken care of and gave me critical information that allowed me to be effective in front of that commission at that time. And the only other thing I'd say is records are critical. I mean, there'll be court proceedings, there'll be the need to recreate what happened years ago and commissions ago, and they have to be recoverable. So it's certainly a project worth supporting.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Okay, let's see, where are we? Oh, that's right. Okay, so some time ago, there was some discussion about a desire to hear reports from all the various boards and, or the policy committees that the commission is on. And so in discussion with the city manager, it was determined to create a time on the work session agenda where each one of us would have an opportunity to give a short update on the policy committees that we are assigned to. And I'm not sure exactly how often we're going to do this, whether it's monthly or whatever, but then it would alleviate the commissioner communications or greatly reduce the commissioner communications on the regular agenda. So that's kind of where we're at. We have 4 of us here this evening. And so I think I'll just start going down the line. 4A is from Mayor Holliday, who's not here this evening. But 4B is Mayor Holliday, Commissioner Shaw, and O'Donnell. So do you, either of you gentlemen have a update on South Fork Water Board?
Your choice, Brian.
Well, I'll probably go ahead on this. We're in the midst of, we had a leak, to put it mildly, in one of our lines, and it's in the midst of being fixed. That's going to provide us not only with a structurally good line, but it's also going to give us a duplicate line in the case of any kind of future issues. So that's good there. The sad news of this is that our manager, Mr. John Collins, is ill, and we're kind of working through some things with him. So I think that's kind of it for South Fork, unless Commissioner O'Donnell has anything.
No, I agree. It's a good summary. I mean, the important point is a redundant system for future use. That's excellent. And the quality of the management of that facility is incomparable. We go there, we don't need a second guess. It's a job well done.
That's great news. Let's see, next one is the Downtown Association Board, and that's one that I've been on for the last couple of years. Just briefly, we are currently, we are developing ways to kind of milk our national award for all it's worth. And just so you know, this is a privilege that will extend indefinitely for us. We will always be a National Main Street Award winner because it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. So even if we may earn it or deserve it in the future, we can never apply for it again. So we are a forever award winner. DOSA also completed a citizen survey recently, and we're in the process of using the results in our future planning. We also created a 5-year plan and are prioritizing many ideas from a community brainstorm session, especially pursuing several different topics and inviting the community to participate in shaping our work plan for the next year. We now have just 5 main task force directions that we'll be taking. I hope you all have been to the elevator and taken a selfie on the new selfie wall that's there and seen the window markings. And lastly on them, DOCA is on target to meet its budget projections for 2018. In 2019, we realized, what am I saying? The budget for 2019 realizes on more, I'm sorry, I'm losing my, there's more work to be done for 2019. I'm going to leave it at that. Being that we lost the EID, we're doing a lot of innovative fundraising experiences, and did anyone have a chance to attend the wine walk last week? That was a really fun event that was sold out on a beautiful cold but non-rainy evening, and they sold 500 little individual cups, brought in all kinds of wineries, and it was just a really great experience. So those are the kind of things that are bringing in some more money.
Is Commissioner Mingelberg still online yet?
Did I skip one?
Yeah.
Oh, oh, thank you.
C4.
I just skipped that one. Okay, so that's all on that. Any questions? Okay, Commissioner Mingelberg, the Clackamas County Coordinating Committee. Are you still there?
Jump up.
Okay.
I thought I heard it hang up.
Let's see. Next is the Willamette Falls Heritage Area Coalition. And let's see, that's also mine. The coalition has completed a research fieldwork report to determine its priorities, brand and marketing concepts, and enhancing the visitor experience. And we're now working on implementing that plan. And at the same time, this is so exciting to show you. This has been a work of art. This is the feasibility study of the Willamette Falls Heritage Area. It's been developed over many, 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 many months. The good news is that the study meets all 10 criteria required by the National Park Service for national heritage areas. And the next step is a vote of Congress to designate the area as a national heritage. So stay tuned on that. We're very excited about that. Next is the Willamette Falls Legacy Project. Mayor Holliday and Commissioner Mengelberg. Still not there? Okay. Okay, next, Clackamas Heritage Partners, let's see, that's mine. We held the 175th anniversary of the Oregon Trail in August. And I just wanted to point out that Phil Lewis has been an exceptional support and help regarding the park and building maintenance at the EOT. And I can't tell you how many times Gail Yazzolino has told me that. So there's great appreciation on their part for what you're doing with them. The Oregon Trail Experience Project, Jerry Herman's team of folks has done a wonderful job on this. It's a self-guided tour around the outside perimeter of the EOT. And a replica of Independence Rock was built by Lowell Miles of Miles Fiberglass. And if you haven't seen it, you just need to walk around the EOT one of these days. It's just an amazing experience that has added to the whole facility. And that's all on that for now. Okay, Citizen Involvement Committee Commission Liaison. Mr. Shaw.
Yes. So the CIC is, we've come a long ways in 4 years, but it's still kind of a work in progress. And I think I mentioned before, I would like to see the CIC become more of a education component. And I think that Rachel Smith here is going to jump on this in a few months, maybe, and follow through, because I remember this being part of your campaign too, Rachel, that we have to find a better way to educate our citizenry. And I think that the CIC, just being the umbrella of all of the neighborhood associations, there's a real opportunity to take advantage of that. And so I think that's, I'm going to pass that off to Rachel if she chooses to go that way. So, but anyway, that's the one thing I've always been kind of looking for, is to see how we can, after I've seen some of the elections, like a year ago, come to find out, especially with our police department, or police building, it got voted down. And then we brought it back after being able to educate everybody a lot better. It passed by 80%. So I think that tells us something, that if we have the opportunity to do a better educational component for our citizens, that, and I think that the CIC is a place we can do that at. So that's where I'm at.
Any questions on that? Okay, and the last two we'll pass for tonight. Next is the city manager's report.
Thank you. So the one update that I have is just a reminder that the November 21st City Commission meeting has been canceled. Our next meeting will be on December 5th. And then have an update from Mr. John Lewis concerning the South Fork Water Board 42-inch water line replacement project that is about to kick off.
Yeah.
Is there a slideshow?
No, there's not. I'm sorry to disappoint you. No, just real quick. Tomorrow is a key day for us, right? Tomorrow, Thursday and Friday. So the project is really one of the pieces that we were concerned about was where we actually have to shut down our water system in a way that we won't be getting any new water into our reservoirs. So we're asking for voluntary curtailment for everybody in the city, actually everybody that gets water from the city of Oregon City and Clackamas River water users that are on the south side of the Clackamas River. So we're asking for folks to do what they can. The good news is we're into a low flow season where most people aren't irrigating, but if we're asking you to not do any outside use, filling of the pool, filling of the hot tub, those kinds of things. We also think that folks could do more that maybe inside the house to limit the amount of water use that they have. So I think it's a good opportunity for folks to get prepared for emergencies like this and maybe store some water and see how much of that you can use during this period of time. Maybe leave some dirty dishes in the sink.
Right.
Those kinds of activities. But beyond that, it's voluntary. So right now, we're not trying to make it too difficult for folks. But we need to get some key work done. And while that key work happens, we need to rely on our reservoir capacity and the lesser use or the least amount of use that folks can do in their homes and businesses, the longer we will have, and hopefully our contractors will, well, South Fork contractors will get that work done in a short period of time, rather than taking all 3 days.
Good. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
And I think lastly, not to belabor the committee reports that we've just added, but hopefully when you're thinking about the updates, this is an opportunity to update the other commissioners as to the discussions. And for staff, it's helpful to, one, have everybody hear the same update as it relates to what's going on with the committees. And then what we've run into in the past is sometimes there are discussions or votes that need to be taken on certain positions, whether they be transportation funding, regional positions, and sometimes, is this something that the whole commission would like to weigh in on to give direction to the representative that's sitting on the committee, or that committee member, is making those decisions on behalf of the city. So those are kind of some of the things that we're hoping this will help bring to the forward a little bit more, as we're having discussions at C4 or MPAC, and that we know that we're doing work, whether it's on how we're going to allocate transportation funding, decisions on urban growth boundaries that we make as sitting representatives, making sure that the commission is aware of those discussions, where they're heading, and if there are things that we do need to get onto an agenda, that is something that, whether with staff presentation or bringing in a representative from one of the agencies so that an informed position can be taken, we're hoping this will hopefully streamline that process a little bit better than we've done historically. That's all that I have tonight.
Thanks for that explanation. Okay, anything further? No? Okay, this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.